or go to mouseprice.com and check out some data there. The key here is not looking at the current listed properties because they are the asking prices, not the sold prices. So what you're doing here is avoiding a scenario where the bank surveyor comes around for the mortgage and then they downvalue the house because you overpaid for what it's worth. This means that you either have to renegotiate with the seller or you have to front the extra cash, which puts yourself at massive risk of negative equity. If another buyer is being silly and pushing up the price, know when to walk away because there's plenty of other great houses out there and it's not worth sinking yourself into extreme affordability. Secondly is letting the property survey scare you. When you get a level 2 RICS survey known as the Home Buyers Report, they're sort of useful, but people often put a lot of emphasis on them. Surveyors have to cover everything for their liability insurance. If they get it wrong, you can effectively claim against their insurance for anything they've missed. This means that they'll go into silly levels of detail over things that really don't matter, and that can sometimes worry people and put them off buying a property. When putting offers on houses last year, I put an offer on a house that was beautiful, Victorian property, it had wooden floors, had great ceilings, and we were against a first-time buyer couple, and they went very, very high on their offer, which was good for them. They got the winning bid. But then when I was talking to the seller, I said, look, here's our offer. We're also not scared of the survey. I'm going to take it with a pinch of salt, and most of the things won't really worry me unless it's incredibly structural and there's genuinely something wrong. Lo and behold, a few months later, the seller got back in touch and they were saying that their buyers had pulled out because the survey had scared them. I actually warned the seller about this and told them that was part of our offer, was that we wouldn't be put off by it, and of course the inevitable happened. Surveyors effectively rank their surveys based on the severity of the defect to give you an idea of what's important and what's not. For example, I've had reports before where they flagged warnings about wonky paving in the back garden or paving that's 50 years old and has some weeds growing through it, which yes, can be helpful, but everything is fixable. And here is an example of a survey that I had done on a buy-to-let property where they gave a rating of 3, which is the highest severity. It talks about cracks, damp, blown plaster, and it sounds quite bad, when actually this specific house was plastered directly onto bricks with no plasterboard. So imagine putting mud on your face and letting it dry, then move your face and all of that mud cracks. Similarly to a house, as it gets cold in the winter and hot on a sunny day, the materials expand and contract, which have the exact same effect. So everything was superficial and there's nothing to worry about. The remarks about damp and blown plaster was because the plaster, from what we could work out, was original. So it had been there since 1950 and over 70 years old. So of course it was a little bit knackered. Now, I don't advocate ignoring cracks because they can be serious, but don't let them scare you. Take it with a pinch of salt. Unless there is huge evidence of a massive crack running all the way through the bricks, then I would personally take it with a pinch of salt and not let it put me off a potential beautiful property. Next is going cheap on conveyancing. Now, this is a bit of a personal one. We've just bought a new house and I made the humongous mistake of not going with a qualified and good solicitor. Might be handling about 70 cases and only sign it off at the end. I had 8 months of hell because of Premier Property Lawyers, poor communication, sheer incompetence, losing emails, losing documents, repeating questions, asking ridiculous, unnecessary inquiries. They cost me hundreds of pounds in expiring valuations, surveys, leasehold documents, and we were 8 days from the sale collapsing due to the buyer's mortgage expiring. And really frustratingly, these companies gaslight you when the customers complain. They're just big factories for house purchasers and have no idea of customer service, so if you want the stress, don't go for them. Their Trustpilot is full of real stories from people sharing how companies like these have caused entire chains to collapse purely down to their incompetence and slowness, but then weirdly full of 5-star reviews that all follow a similar pattern that to me smells like fake reviews. The best thing to do here is go to Google Maps, search property solicitors and read all the positive and negative reviews, but I'd always now go for a local established firm with strong real reviews and who don't have the shiny apps and portals, but instead do it over email. They're your classic, qualified, competent firm. It might cost more, but that being said, price isn't necessarily tied to service. But just don't go for one of these big online firms where you have to communicate to a central mailbox. Just don't do it. Next is not researching the local area. Most people know the area they're buying in. If you don't, that's a good place to start. What's the local town like? If you've got hobbies, what can you do with them in the local area? But for me, it's the little things. I regret my London flat being next to a super noisy main road. We had buses going up and down constantly, police cars, knobs with loud exhausts, and it also meant that in the summer, when it got super hot with it being a new build, opening the door wasn't the most peaceful of things. Even when house hunting recently to move out of London, there was one house. It was a Victorian, Gothic house, but there was a bus stop outside, and when I checked the timetable of the buses, they ran up to midnight every single day. And with it being an old property, it had wooden single glazed windows that can't be replaced because it's protected in a conservation area. And with the main bedroom on the front, I just knew it would annoy me with idling bus engines. Another one is things like nurseries and school playgrounds. Don't underestimate the noise generated from a school playground. And if you're buying a new build, I found this in new build estates more than anything else. A lot of them at the moment tend to be near motorways and A roads on old farmland. Again, here, don't underestimate the noise of a motorway because you will never escape it if it's something that annoys you. And lastly is thinking about where you are. I love picking on new build estates because they're all the same. A lot are in the middle of nowhere, no shops nearby, no local pub, no coffee shop. What is it that matters to you in the local area? Having moved from London, I wanted parks to walk in, trees